For 10 years, my brother William and his wife Tanya excluded me from every family holiday, claiming my grief over our parents made me too negative. I rebuilt my life in silence, buying a luxury mountain estate. Now, they want the keys. Before we continue today's story, we have an urgent announcement to make. Due to technical issues, we are pivoting towards another channel. Please subscribe to our new channel, Inherited Revenge. You can find the link in the video description, the pinned comment, and the collaboration tag on this video. Make sure to switch over now so you don't miss out. Thank you for your support. Now back to the story. The betrayal didn't happen with a shout or a scream. It happened in the quiet hum of a hospital room, illuminated only by the sterile glow of monitors and the notification light on my phone. I was lying in a hospital bed, recovering from a severe bout of pneumonia that had nearly turned into sepsis. I had been there for 4 days. My chest felt like it was filled with broken glass every time I inhaled, and my body was so weak that lifting a spoon of gelatin felt like a workout. I was vulnerable, scared, and honestly, just waiting for someone to walk through the door. My phone buzzed on the tray table. I reached for it, my hand trembling slightly from the IV drip in my arm. I expected a text from my brother, William. I had texted him 2 days ago telling him I was admitted. I expected something, a get well soon, a do you need anything, maybe even a promise to visit. Instead, a notification from Instagram popped up. It was a post from my sister-in-law, Tanya. I tapped it, hoping it was a distraction, maybe a picture of their dog. The image loaded, and the air left my lungs harder than the pneumonia ever could. It was a group selfie, high resolution, perfectly filtered. They were at the airport, standing in front of the gate for a flight to Zurich. William was grinning, his arm around Tanya, who was wearing a white faux fur coat and oversized sunglasses. Their kids, Aaron and Serenity, were posing with their luggage, looking effortlessly cool. The caption read, "Finally escaping the gloom, annual family ski trip begins now. Sending good vibes only. Family first good energy Zurich bound." I stared at the screen. Family first. I checked the timestamp, posted 10 minutes ago. I checked my messages with William. My text from 2 days ago, "Hey Will, just letting you know I'm at St. Mary's pneumonia. Doctors say I'll be okay, but it's rough," was marked as read. He had read it. He knew I was alone in a hospital bed, struggling to breathe. And his response wasn't to call. It wasn't to visit. It was to pack his bags, round up his wife and children, and fly to Switzerland for a vacation I hadn't even been told was happening. I dropped the phone onto the sheets. The plastic casing made a dull thud. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and stinging, but I didn't wipe them away. I couldn't. The physical pain in my chest was suddenly eclipsed by a hollow, aching void in my stomach. It wasn't just that they went on a trip without me. That had been the norm for a decade. It was the timing. It was the callousness of leaving your only sister in a hospital ward while you went to sip hot cocoa in the Alps, posting about good vibes while I was fighting for oxygen. I looked at the picture again. William's smile seemed to mock me. He looked so unburdened, so free of guilt. "Family first," I whispered, my voice raspy and broken in the empty room. That was the moment something inside me snapped. It wasn't a snap of anger or a snap of hysteria. It was the sound of a tether finally breaking. The tether that had bound me to them, the desperate need for their approval, the hope that one day they would welcome me back into the fold. It severed. They thought I was too negative. They thought I was a burden. But looking at that photo, seeing the expensive luggage and the forced smiles, I realized something they didn't know. They had forgotten one crucial thing about me. I wasn't the broken little sister anymore. And while they were spending money they didn't have on a trip to impress strangers on the internet, I was about to make a purchase that would change everything. The weeks following my discharge were a blur of physical therapy and solitary reflection. I went back to my apartment, a modest, clean place that William always turned his nose up at, and simply existed. I didn't call them, and they didn't call me. I watched their trip unfold on social media like a slow-motion car crash I couldn't look away from. Tanya posted daily reels of the fondue, the slopes, the après-ski parties. Serenity, my 16-year-old niece, posted TikToks complaining about the Wi-Fi in the chalet and making fun of the old people on the slopes. Aaron, 20 and supposedly in college, mostly posted photos of himself holding expensive bottles of vodka in clubs. William posted nothing, but he was in the background of everyone else's content, looking stressed. I knew that look. That was the look of a man checking his credit card balance every hour. When they finally returned, 3 weeks later, I got a single text from William. Hey, saw you're out of the hospital. Glad you're good. Trip was crazy, we're exhausted. Let's catch up next month. Next month, not can I come over and help you with groceries. Not I'm sorry I missed you. Just a dismissal disguised as a plan. Glad you're good, I muttered, deleting the message without replying. I sat at my desk, opening my laptop. My work setup was impressive: 3 monitors, a high-end ergonomic chair, a custom-built PC. To William and Tanya, I was just doing computer stuff. They thought I was a mid-level IT support worker, scraping by. They never asked about my title. They never asked about my contracts. They didn't know I was a senior software architect specializing in high-frequency trading platforms. They didn't know that for the last 5 years, while they were blowing money on leased Range Rovers and designer handbags, I had been working 80-hour weeks, consulting for major fintech firms, and banking 90% of my income. My bank account wasn't just healthy, it was formidable. I opened a real estate listing I had been eyeing for 6 months. It was a property 3 hours north, deep in the mountains. Not a tourist trap condo like the ones William rented, but a private estate. It was called The Eyrie. It sat on 20 acres of private forest, backing right up to a national park. The house itself was a masterpiece of timber and glass, a modern A-frame with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a private lake and the peaks beyond. It had a heated wraparound deck, a chef's kitchen, a sauna, and a detached guest house. It was listed for a price that would make William choke on his scotch. I had toured it privately just before I got sick. The realtor, a kind woman named Sarah, had told me there was another offer coming in, but the sellers preferred a cash buyer who wouldn't tear it down to build a resort. I looked at the photos on the screen. The snow-dusted pines, the roaring stone fireplace, the absolute, deafening silence of the location. It was everything Tanya would hate. No cell service unless you stood in one specific spot. No clubs nearby, no audience. It was perfect. I picked up my phone and dialed Sarah. Mila, she answered, sounding surprised. I heard you were unwell. I'm recovering, I said, my voice stronger than it had been in weeks. Sarah, is the Eyrie still available? It is, but the other buyers are pushing hard. They want to subdivide the land. I'm buying it, I said. Okay, she said, shifting into professional mode. We can look at financing options if... No financing, I interrupted. Cash, full ask. I can wire the deposit today and close as soon as the title work is done. There was a long silence on the other end. Cash, Mila, that's a very significant amount. I know, I said, feeling a smile tug at the corner of my mouth for the first time in a month. I want the keys by the end of the month. And Sarah, I want the transaction kept completely private. No social media posts from the agency. No, just sold signs. Of course, she said, her voice filled with a new kind of respect. I hung up and leaned back in my chair. I closed my eyes and pictured the cabin. I pictured myself sitting on that deck, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise over the mountain, miles away from bad energy. But as I sat there, a thought occurred to me, a dark, intrusive thought. William loved the mountains. He fancied himself a skier, though he spent more time in the lodge bar than on the runs. He was constantly talking about buying a winter getaway, but never had the capital. If he knew what I had just done, the entitlement would be suffocating. He would see it not as my home, but as a family asset he had a right to manage. I opened my email and saw a new message from Tanya. Subject: birthday dinner for Aaron. Hey Mila, we're doing a dinner for Aaron next week. It's going to be really high energy and fun, lots of his college friends. We figured you'd probably want to stay home and rest since you're still recovering and probably not up for the noise. We'll send you pics. Love, T. I stared at the email. Another exclusion. Another assumption that I was too weak, too sad, too low vibration to be included. I didn't reply. I just moved the email to a folder I had named Evidence. They thought they were icing me out. They thought they were punishing me. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. When you push someone away long enough, eventually, they learn to like the distance. And they learn to build walls that you can't just walk through whenever you feel like it. To understand why their rejection stung so much, you have to understand what I gave up for them. When our parents die, D in a car accident 12 years ago, William fell apart. He was 34, just starting his real estate business, and he didn't have the emotional bandwidth to handle the estate, the funerals, or the grief. I was 30. I had just gone through a brutal divorce. I was raw, but I stepped up. I was the one who met with the lawyers. I was the one who cleaned out Mom and Dad's house, sorting through 30 years of memories while William sat in the living room, drinking Dad's wine collection and crying about how unfair the universe was to him. I gave him the larger share of the inheritance because he said he needed to invest in the business. I signed over the family car to him because Tanya needed something safe for the kids. I absorbed all the debt, all the paperwork, and all the sadness. And for a while, I was depressed. Who wouldn't be? I had lost my husband and my parents in the span of 2 years. I was sad. I was quiet. I didn't want to go to parties. I didn't want a fake smile for Christmas cards. That's when Tanya started the narrative. Mila is just draining, she would say to William, loud enough for me to hear from the kitchen. She brings the whole vibe down. We're trying to manifest abundance, and she's just radiating lack. William, ever the chameleon, adopted her language. He started telling me I needed to fix my mindset before I could be around the kids. He didn't want my depression catching on to them like a flu. So slowly, I was phased out. Now, sitting in my apartment 3 months after the hospital incident, the phone rang. It was William. I hesitated. I was technically the owner of the Airy now. I had spent the last 4 weekends up there, moving in furniture, stocking the pantry, and setting up a high-speed satellite internet connection. It was my sanctuary. I hadn't told a soul. I picked up the phone. Hello. Mila, William's voice was booming, overly cheerful. It sounded like a sales pitch. How's my favorite sister? I'm your only sister, William, I said dryly. What's up? Hey, don't be like that. I'm calling to check in. We haven't seen you in. Wow, has it been 3 months? 4, I corrected, since before I went to the hospital. Right. Crazy times, he breezed past it. Listen, I'm actually calling with a bit of a business proposition. Or, well, an opportunity. I leaned back, my guard instantly up. I'm not lending you money, William. What? No, come on, Mila. I'm doing great. The market is on fire. He paused, and I could hear him taking a sip of something. Actually, things are a little tight just this quarter because of some liquidity issues with a new development, but that's temporary. No, I was calling because, well, I heard something. My heart stopped. Heard what? I ran into an old friend of yours, Sarah, the realtor. My grip on the phone tightened. Sarah had signed an NDA. She wouldn't have told him. She mentioned she sold a place up in the Cascades recently. Big place. A-frame. She didn't say who bought it, obviously, client confidentiality and all that crap. But she asked how you were doing in the same breath. He was fishing. He was putting 2 and 2 together, but he wasn't good at math. And, I asked, keeping my voice steady. And, William let out a short, condescending laugh. I told her you were barely making rent, so there's no way you were the buyer. But it got me thinking, you've been disappearing on weekends a lot lately. Tanya drove by your place twice and your car was gone. I go hiking, I lied. It's good for the lungs. Right, hiking. He didn't believe me, but not because he suspected I was rich. He didn't believe me because he didn't think I was capable of doing anything interesting. Look, the reason I ask is, Tanya and I are looking for a venue for a winter retreat. We're trying to rebrand her coaching business. High altitude, high frequency, that sort of thing. We need a place that screams luxury but feels rustic. Okay, I said, check Airbnb. We did, everything is booked or trash, he snapped, his nice guy mask slipping for a second. I have a feeling you know someone, or maybe you're house sitting? Is that it? Are you house sitting for one of your rich tech nerd bosses up there? That was it, that was his logic. I couldn't possibly own a cabin. I must be the help. I'm not house sitting, William, I said. Come on, Mila. If you have a connection, hook your brother up. I need this. Tanya is on my back about the brand launch. If we can get a high-end location for free or cheap, it would save my ass. Why would I have a connection? I asked, testing him. Because you're always lurking in the background, he said, his tone turning dismissive. You hear things. Look, if you know of a place, just tell me. Don't be selfish. We're family. Family, I repeated. Like when you went to Zurich while I was in the ICU. There was a silence on the line, heavy and th. Ick. You're still holding on to that? William sighed, the sound of pure exasperation. That's exactly what Tanya means about your energy, Mila. You hold grudges. It's toxic. We went to Zurich to generate positivity for the family. You would have just been miserable in a hospital bed anyway. Why ruin our trip? The audacity took my breath away. He truly believed it. He truly believed that his vacation was more important than my life. I have to go, William, I said. Wait, so you don't know about the cabin Sarah sold? I didn't say that, I said. So you do know. His voice spiked with greed. Who bought it? Can we ask them for a rental? Come on, Mila, give me a name. I looked out my window at the gray city street, imagining the snow falling on the pines at the Eyrie. I can't give you a name, William, I said softly. Why not? Because, I said, my voice hardening. The owner is very particular about who they let in. They have a strict policy. What policy? No bad energy, I said. And I hung up the phone. The silence in my apartment after I hung up on William was heavy, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with a new, sharp clarity. William wasn't just asking for a favor. He was desperate. I could hear it in the tremor of his voice when he mentioned liquidity issues. My brother was many things, arrogant, selfish, entitled, but he was rarely anxious about money. He usually believed his own hype. If he was admitting to temporary tightness, it meant he was likely drowning. I sat back at my desk, the glow of my monitors illuminating the dark room. I wasn't just a sister anymore, I was a strategist. And for the first time in my life, I held the cards. Time to see what you're really hiding, Will, I whispered. I opened a new browser window. It wasn't hard to find public records if you knew where to look, and my profession required me to be adept at data mining. I started with his business, Prestige Auto and Estates. The website was slick. Photos of high-end cars, drone shots of mansions, and William's face plastered everywhere with captions like "Close the deal" and "Luxury is a lifestyle." But the back-end told a different story. I pulled up the county clerk's records. There were 3 liens against his primary residence. 3. 1 from the IRS, 2 from private contractors. I dug deeper. I looked up the high-altitude, high-frequency retreat he had mentioned. It was listed on a flashy landing page Tanya had built. Join us for an exclusive 5-day wealth manifestation retreat in the Alps. Location changed to private domestic estate due to exclusivity. Tickets, $5,000 per person. Only 10 spots left. Domestic estate, I read aloud. They had already sold tickets. They had taken money from people, probably Tanya's desperate Instagram followers, promising a luxury winter getaway they didn't have. They had banked on the Zurich trip being a scouting mission, but clearly they couldn't afford a venue there. Now, they were scrambling for a backup. They needed a cabin. Specifically, they needed my cabin, or one just like it, to avoid being sued for fraud. My phone pinged. It was a notification from my bank, a soft, reassuring sound. I looked at the evidence folder again. All the times they had left me out. All the times they had called me negative for grieving mom and dad. They weren't just mean, they were frauds. They were projecting their own chaos onto me. I decided to confirm my suspicion. I needed to know exactly how deep the hole was. I hired a private investigator I had used for background checks on potential employees. I sent him a quick email, need a full asset search on William redacted, verified debt load and pending litigation. Rush job. 2 days later, the report came back. It was worse than I thought. William was being sued by 2 former investors for misappropriation of funds. His dealership was essentially a parking lot for leased cars he couldn't move, and Tanya's credit cards were maxed out. They were living on a razor's edge, using new debt to pay old debt. The winter break trip wasn't a vacation. It was a desperate attempt to host this retreat, take the remaining cash, and pay off the most aggressive creditors before the walls closed in. If I didn't give them the cabin, they wouldn't just be disappointed. They would be exposed. I sat back, a cold smile touching my lips. Well, isn't that interesting? I had the leverage. I knew their secret. Now, I just had to wait for them to make the next move, and I knew exactly how to make them do it. I posted a single photo on my own private Instagram account, the one I only allowed a few close friends to follow. But I knew Tanya had a burner account she used to spy on me. She couldn't help herself. The photo was simple, a view from the deck of the Airy. The sun setting over the snow-capped peaks, a glass of expensive red wine on the railing, and the caption, "Finally home. The air is just cleaner up her." Lee. I didn't tag the location. I didn't tag anyone. I waited. It took exactly 45 minutes. My phone rang. It wasn't William this time. It was Tanya. "Mila," she chirped, her voice pitched an octave higher than normal. "Oh my God, how are you?" "I'm fine, Tanya," I said, putting her on speaker while I continued to type code on my main screen. "What can I do for you?" I saw your post. The view, it's breathtaking. Where is that?" "It's my new place," I said casually. "Your new place?" She paused, the gears turning audibly. "You mean you're renting it?" "No," I said, "I bought it, closed last week." There was a dead silence on the line. I could practically hear her doing the mental math, trying to reconcile the broke, negative sister with the owner of a luxury mountain estate. "You bought it." Her voice dropped the cheerful facade. "With what money? Did you get an inheritance check we didn't know about?" "No, Tanya, with my earnings. I've done quite well for myself lately." Oh, the jealousy was palpable, thick and acidic. "Well, that's great, really great. William will be so surprised." "I'm sure he will be." "So," she pivoted, her hustle kicking in, "since you have this huge place and it's just you, right? Because you're single." "It's just me," I confirmed. "Right, well, listen, we're in a bit of a bind. We have this massive opportunity for the family. A retreat, high-end clients. We were going to do it in Aspen, but the venue fell through at the last minute, total nightmare, bad vibes everywhere. We need a place for winter break, just for a week. We'd pay you, of course, or, we could cut you in on the profits." "You want to rent my home?" I asked. "Not rent, silly. Use. We're family, and it would be great exposure for you. We could tag you. Hosted by Mila. It would help your brand." "I don't have a brand, Tanya." "Everyone has a brand. Look, William is going to call you. He's the business guy. But honestly, Mila, this could be the thing that brings us all back together. The kids miss you. Aaron was just asking about his Auntie Mila yesterday." I knew for a fact Aaron hadn't asked about me in 5 years unless he needed cash. "Let me speak to William," I said. "He's right here." There was a shuffling sound, and then William's voice came on. He didn't sound friendly. He sounded entitled. So, he started, no greeting. You bought the Aerie, Sarah's listing. I did. How? He demanded. How the hell did you afford a $3 million property, Mila? Are you laundering money? I work, William, hard. While you were posting selfies in Zurich, I was closing contracts. Whatever, he scoffed. Look, we don't have time for your little secret life right now. Tanya told you the situation. We need the cabin for the last week of December. We have 10 VIP guests coming. We need the main house and the guest house. You can stay in the loft or, honestly, it might be better if you weren't there. The guests need total privacy. Let me get this straight, I said, my voice calm but icy. You want to kick me out of my own house for a week to host a retreat I wasn't invited to for a business that excludes me. It's not excluding you, William shouted. It's business. These people are paying for a high-frequency experience. You know how you get. You're heavy. We can't risk you crying about mom or bringing down the mood. It's a bad look. There it was, the trigger, the justification they had used for a decade. So I'm too negative, I said. Too much bad energy. Yes, Tanya chimed in from the background. It's nothing personal, Mila. We just need high vibes only. I took a deep breath. I looked at the pie report on my screen. The debts, the lawsuits, the desperation. I see, I said. Well, William, Tanya, I have an answer for you. Great, William said. Send me the address and the key code. We'll need to send a cleaning crew in too. No, I interrupted. What? My answer is no. Mila, don't start, William warned. I'm not starting anything. I'm finishing it. You can't use the cabin. Why the hell not? He exploded. We're family. You're going to let it sit empty while we lose this opportunity. I'm not letting it sit empty, I said, leaning into the microphone, enjoying every syllable. I'm going to be there, enjoying my home, and as for why you can't come. I paused for effect. You said it yourself, William. My home is a sanctuary. I've curated a very specific atmosphere, and I'm afraid I can't let you in. Stop playing games, he growled. I'm not playing, I smiled, I said, letting the warmth of victory seep into my voice. Sorry, it's just for people with good energy. You little. And frankly, I continued, cutting him off, people who lie to investors about owning a private domestic estate to sell tickets for a retreat they can't afford. That's very bad energy, William. Very low vibration. The line went dead silent. The silence lasted for about 10 seconds. Then, the explosion happened. How do you know about that? William hissed, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I know everything, Will, I said. I know about the liens. I know about the lawsuits from the investors in your luxury condo development that never broke ground. I know Tanya's credit score is lower than her shoe size. I know you sold tickets to this retreat promising a venue you didn't have. You've been spying on us, Tanya screeched in the background. She's a stalker. I told you she was toxic. I did a public records search, I said. It's not stalking, it's due diligence. Something you should have done before you spent 50 grand on a Swiss vacation you couldn't afford. Listen to me, William said, his voice shaking with a mix of rage and panic. You don't understand business. This retreat fixes everything. We just need the venue. If we pull this off, we pay the liens, we're back on top. If you don't give us the cabin, you are actively ruining this family. You are bankrupting your brother. I didn't bankrupt you, William. You did. And I am not giving you my home to help you commit fraud. It's not fraud, he yelled. It's a pivot. It's theft, I corrected, and I won't be a party to it. I hung up. I knew it wasn't over. People like William and Tanya don't just accept defeat. They escalate, they weaponize the narrative. Within an hour, my phone started blowing up. Not from them, but from our extended family. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years were texting me. Mila, why are you doing this to Will? He says you're holding his business hostage. Auntie Mila, Dad is crying. He says we're going to lose our house because of you. Please just let us use the cabin. That was from Serenity, my 16-year-old niece. They were using the kids. Of course they were. Then came the public shaming. Tanya went live on Instagram. I watched from my anonymous account. She was crying, mascara running down her face, perfectly staged. Guys, she sobbed into the camera. I don't usually do this, but the enemy is attacking us so hard right now. We have this amazing retreat planned, and a family member, someone we trusted, someone we've tried to help for years, is sabotaging us out of pure jealousy. She's blocking our blessings. She's trying to steal our joy. Comments flooded in. Stay strong, mama. Cut off the toxicity. Jealousy is a disease. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. The family knew. I felt a pang of old guilt. The conditioning ran deep. Was I being too harsh? Was I really ruining them? If I just let them use the place for a week, would it save them? No, I looked at the Pi report again. The retreat money wouldn't save them. It would just prolong the inevitable. They owed nearly $2 million in total. $5,000 a head for 10 people was 50 grand. It was a drop in the bucket. It was just enough to keep up appearances for another month while they dug a deeper hole. I had to end this, not just for me, but for the kids. If William went down for fraud, Aaron and Serenity would be collateral damage. I needed to break the spell. I needed to show the family and William that I wasn't the villain. I was the only one living in reality. I called my lawyer. I need to draft a cease and desist for defamation, I said. And I need you to prepare a file for the State Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division. I'm not filing it yet, but I want it ready. For who? My lawyer asked. My brother, I said. 2 days later, William showed up at my apartment building. I wasn't there. I was already at the Aerie, safe behind my gate, but my doorbell camera caught him. He was red-faced, pounding on the door, shouting. I know you're in there, Mila. Open up, you can't hide. He looked unhinged. He looked like a man who had run out of options. He pulled out his phone and called me. I watched him on the camera feed as I answered. You're not at the apartment, he said, breathing hard. No, I'm at my home. I'm coming up there, he threatened. I know where it is. I'll break the damn gate down. If you set foot on my property, William, I will have you arrested for trespassing. And then I will send the file I have on your business to the investors you're ripping off. You wouldn't. Try me. I'm not the negative little sister anymore. I'm the one holding the deed, and I'm the one holding the evidence. He stopped pounding on the door. He looked at the camera, his eyes wild. You think you're better than us, he spat. No, William, I said, my voice heavy with a sadness I couldn't quite hide. I just think I'm honest, and that's something you haven't been in a long time. We'll see, he said. Mom and Dad would be ashamed of you. Mom and Dad left you everything, I reminded him, and you squandered it. Don't bring them into this. He stormed. D off. I thought that was the end of it. I thought he would retreat, lick his wounds, and maybe cancel the event. I was wrong. He did the unthinkable. He sent the invites out anyway, with my address on them. I found out when a catering van pulled up to my gate 3 days before Christmas. The driver buzzed the intercom. Delivery for the Prestige retreat. I have 20 cases of champagne. My blood ran cold. He was going to force a confrontation. He was going to show up with the guests, with the food, with the vibes, and dare me to turn them away at the gate. He was banking on my embarrassment. He was banking on me being too weak to cause a scene in front of strangers. He had forgotten I wasn't weak. I was prepared. Turn around, I told the driver. There is no retreat here. But the order is paid for. Then keep the champagne, but you're not coming in. I hung up and dialed William. He didn't answer. Okay, I said to the empty room. You want a show? Let's give them a show. The morning of the retreat arrived with a blinding, indifferent beauty. The sun glittered off the fresh powder that had fallen overnight, turning the world into a pristine white canvas. Inside the Aerie, the silence was absolute. save for the crackle of the fire I had built before dawn. I wasn't wearing my usual oversized sweater and leggings. I was dressed in a tailored wool coat, boots, and slacks. I looked like the owner of a multi-million-dollar estate. I looked like someone who signed checks, not someone who begged for them. I had alerted the local sheriff's department the day before. I told them I expected a disturbance, a group of trespassers attempting to access my property under false pretenses. They had a patrol car stationed down the road, just out of sight, waiting for my signal. At 2:00 p.m., the convoy appeared. I watched them on the security monitors. First, William's leased Range Rover, black and aggressive against the snow. Then, a Sprinter van, likely a rental for the guests. Then, Tanya's white SUV. They slowed as they approached my massive iron gates, which were firmly locked. My phone rang. Williams. I ignored it. I walked out of the front door, down the heated stone steps, and stood in the center of the driveway, about 50 yards back from the gate. I could see them through the iron bars. William was already out of his car, frantically punching the code into the keypad, a code that didn't work. He saw me. "Mila," he screamed, his voice carrying over the crisp mountain air. "Open the damn gate, we have guests." Tanya was out of the car now, too, waving her arms. She looked frantic, her high-vibes persona cracking under the pressure of reality. Behind them, the doors of the Sprinter van opened, and a group of confused-looking people spilled out. These were the VIP, people who had paid $5,000 for a luxury retreat. They were dressed in designer ski gear, holding luggage, looking expectantly at the house. I walked closer, stopping just 10 feet from the gate. I didn't shout. I didn't look angry. I looked disappointed. "Go home, William," I said calmly. "Are you insane?" William hissed, gripping the bars like a prisoner. "These people paid. You are humiliating us. Just let us in, we'll explain it later." One of the guests, a tall woman with expensive sunglasses, stepped forward. "Excuse me, is there a problem with the check-in?" "Yes," I said, addressing her directly. "The problem is that this is a private residence. It is not a retreat center. It is not for rent, and I have never spoken to these people in my life." The woman turned to William. "What is she talking about? You said this was your family estate." "It is," William lied, sweat beading on his forehead despite the freezing temperature. She's the caretaker. She's having a breakdown. I told you, family drama. Just give me a second to handle her." He turned back to me, his eyes pleading, desperate, manic. "Mila, please, don't do this. I will give you anything. I will sign over the car. I will. I'll make you a partner. Just open the gate." "I don't want your car, William. It's leased. I don't want to be your partner. Your business is insolvent." "Shut up," Tanya shrieked, rushing the gate. "Don't you dare ruin this for us. You jealous, bitter witch. You've always wanted to see us fail." "I didn't want you to fail," I said, my voice rising just enough to cut through her hysteria. "I wanted you to be honest, but you can't do it." I pulled a manila envelope from inside my coat. I held it up. "This," I said, "is a cease and desist order. And this," I pulled out a thicker stack of papers, "is a copy of the lien filings against Prestige Auto, the bankruptcy petition you drafted but haven't filed yet, and the proof that you have taken $50,000 from these people for a venue you do not own." The guests gasped. The tall woman looked at William, her expression shifting from confusion to "Oh, fury." "Is that true?" she demanded. No, William stammered, backing away from the gate. "She's lying, she's mentally ill, we own this place, it's in a trust." "Show them the deed, William," I challenged. "Or show them the rental agreement, show them anything." He froze, he had nothing. "You took their money to pay off your gambling debts and the 3 months of back rent on your own house," I continued, relentless. "You dragged our family, your children, and these innocent people up a mountain in the middle of winter to a house you have no right to enter, because you thought I would be too weak to stop you." I looked past him to the back seat of the Range Rover. I saw Aaron and Serenity. They weren't looking at their phones. They were staring at their father, their faces pale, their eyes wide with a sudden, horrifying understanding. They were seeing the man behind the curtain for the first time. "I called the sheriff," I said softly. "They are 2 minutes away. If you leave now, you might be able to refund these people before they press charges. But you are not coming in here." William stared at me. The arrogance was gone. The entitlement was gone. All that was left was a small, frightened man who realized his house of cards had finally collapsed. "You're dead to me," he whispered, his voice shaking. "You hear me? You have no family." "I know," I said. "You made sure of that years ago." The sound of a siren cut through the air. William flinched. He looked at the guests, who were now shouting, demanding their money back, taking photos of his license plate. He looked at Tanya, who was sobbing into her hands. He looked at his kids, who refused to meet his eyes. He got back in the car. "Get in," he screamed at Tanya. They scrambled into the vehicle, tires spinning on the ice as they peeled away, leaving the confused guests and the Sprinter van driver standing at my gate. I pressed the button on my remote. The heavy iron gate swung open. The guests looked at me wary. "You can't stay," I said gently, "but you can come into the courtyard to wait for the sheriff. He'll need your statements." The tall woman looked at me, then at the retreating Range Rover. "He said you were the negative one." I smiled, a sad, tired smile. He says a lot of things. The fallout was swift, brutal, and entirely public. The high-frequency retreat became a local news scandal. The guests, armed with the sheriff's report and my statement, filed a class action lawsuit for fraud. It triggered a domino effect. The investors William had been dodging came out of the woodwork. The IRS got involved. Within 3 months, Prestige Auto and Estates was dissolved. William and Tanya filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. They lost the house, the cars, the club memberships, everything that defined them. I didn't gloat, I didn't post about it. I watched it happen from a distance, feeling a strange mix of relief and sorrow. It didn't have to be this way, but they had chosen the lie over the truth every single time. I stayed at the Eyrie through the winter. The solitude was healing. I learned to chop wood. I learned to identify bird calls. I learned that silence wasn't empty, it was full of peace. One afternoon in March, as the snow was beginning to melt, my gate buzzer rang. I checked the monitor. It was an old sedan, rusted at the wheel wells. Serenity got out of the passenger side. She looked different. No makeup, no designer clothes. She was wearing a simple puffer jacket and jeans. I buzzed her in. I met her on the porch with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. She looked at me, her eyes red-rimmed. "Dad said not to come," she said, her voice small. "I figured," I said. "He says you ruined us." "Do you believe that?" She looked out at the lake, shivering slightly. "No, I saw his face at the gate, Aunt Mila. He was scared. He knew he was lying." She took a breath. "We're living in a 2-bedroom apartment in the city now. Mom is working at a retail store. Dad just sits on the couch." She turned to me, tears spilling over. "Why did they do it? Why didn't they just tell us we were broke?" "Because they were afraid," I said. "They were afraid that without the money, they weren't worth anything. They thought the good energy came from the things they bought, not the people they were." I handed her the mug. "I have a guest room," I said. "In the loft, it has a view of the sunrise, it's quiet. If you need a break, if you need to study for finals, it's yours." Serenity looked at me, shocked. "But, Dad said you hate us. He said we have bad energy." "I don't hate you, Serenity. I hate the lie. But you..." I reached out and brushed a stray hair from her face. "You're not the lie, you're just a kid who got caught in it." She started to cry then, really cry, the kind of sobbing that shakes your whole body. I pulled her into a hug. It was the first time I had hugged my niece in 10 years. She stay. Ed for the weekend, then she stayed for spring break. Eventually, Aaron came too. He was angrier, more defensive, but he needed a place to crash, and I gave him chores. I made him chop wood. I made him help me fix the deck. I showed him that work, real, physical work, felt better than pretending to be rich. I never reconciled with William and Tanya. They were too far gone, too consumed by their own narrative of victimhood. To this day, they tell anyone who will listen that I stole their inheritance and sabotaged their business. But it doesn't bother me anymore. I sit on my deck at the Eyrie, watching the sun dip below the mountains, painting the sky in hues of violet and gold. The air is crisp and clean. My phone is silent. My brother wanted a retreat for people with good energy. He wanted a place where the vibes were high and the world couldn't touch him. He was right about one thing: this place is special. But he was wrong about the source. Good energy isn't something you can buy or manifest or fake with a filter. It's what's left when you stop lying. It's the peace that comes when you have nothing to hide. I took a sip of my wine and smiled at the empty, beautiful horizon. "Sorry, William," I whispered to the wind. "Strictly high vibes only."